Let's talk about leadership with those who are different from you. I think what I want to first say is that misunderstanding is common. When we interact with people who are a little different, let alone people from different backgrounds, there is misunderstanding and it's painful. It's hard. I think about when my wife was somebody working on church staff in Canada, and she was wondering whether the challenges she was facing was because she was a woman, was it because she was American, was it because she was young, was it because she was new? What was the issue? And that's often how it is, where it's difficult to figure out what actually is going on with the miscommunication or the resistance that we're feeling. We have categories from Globe, from various cross-cultural thinkers who try to help us think about things like direct communication versus indirect communication, because some of us would feel like direct communication is right. That's the right way to do it. If you're not doing it that way, then you're wrong. And we're able to see, no, there's some value in a lot of cultures who do things in a little bit more indirect way. And then we're able to see, even in scripture or in the Bible, where we thought that direct communication was taught, that indirect communication can also be a thing. But one of the things with thinking about those who are different is that we don't want to completely succumb to whatever that culture is, that way is. We don't want to lose our moral convictions, especially that our principles. At the same time, we don't want to keep our principles so tightly that we fail to communicate. We can't even interact. We can't even get breakthroughs because we are not connecting with people. So that's really the trick. I think one thing I would urge is to learn your history if you can. So in situations, I would really encourage you to look at the history of the organization. But what I'm most thinking about is, for example, in interacting with African Americans, to know the history of African Americans in our country, from slavery to Jim Crow to lynching to injustices in the court system. Those really, really are useful background in helping to understand someone today, and to have good conversations about what's happening today. The last thing I just want to talk about is the value of being the outsider, where you feel awkward, where everybody else knows each other. Maybe they're of a culture and you're the mascot, you're the ugly duckling. One of these people is not like the others. What is the value of that? Because that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to not know the language, to be making faux pas with your spoon and fork. It's awkward. And I just want to reflect on this a little bit and just submit to you that there's real value in having somebody who is from somewhere else, who is an advocate or doing good of some kind, in a situation where they are the outsider, but they're a source of good that can be really good. Again, the moral quality of that engagement, that action, those words, whether it's loving or not, really makes a difference between whether a person is interfering, they're being patronizing, they're interfering, versus them being incredibly helpful. And I think about when Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement, when they did have some white ministers who came down and showed solidarity with them in their work. I think about his plea within the Birmingham jail when he was heard by the white moderate pastors who are saying, no, they shouldn't be stirring things up like this. And I just think, no, see, that's the value of having some white pastors, priests, rabbis who came down from the north who were on their side and did walk on the bridge together to say, no, they are not an outlier. We're with them. So there's a role in being an outsider, even if those outsiders felt like, hey, I'm not at the ground level with this. I'm sort of a visitor or guest, but I recognize what they're doing and I'm with them. I'll just name one other thing, which I just think is an interesting stat, and it's that 87% of Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims do not personally know a Christian. That's from the 2022 World Christianity and Religions 2022, A Complicated Relationship article. And I just think about how our world doesn't mix that well. 32% of the world is Christian, but 87% of Buddhists, Muslims, and Hindus don't know a single Christian personally. I always thought about that story about how uh, people from other countries know about Americans from Baywatch, which I don't really even know much about Baywatch, but it's like David Hasselhoff and like some beach TV show. And you think that's all they know about Americans? And it just reminds me of the importance of going, of traveling, of living in another place, of making yourself awkward, or you don't want to be awkward on purpose, but making yourself available to be somewhere with those who are different, to learn, to be curious, to help, to be of assistance, to listen, to see if there's anything you can offer, or just to love and listen and be interested in how that there's something about that that brings beauty and goodness, and our world needs that. There's something in the Christian religion really that encourages that sort of mixing that for the purpose of love. And so I just want to encourage you as you do cross-cultural leadership, which again, I feel like we have misunderstandings every day in leadership, regardless of whether it's cross-cultural. But if you really realize I'm doing international business, I'm doing something that is, people from a lot of different cultures, and we're having we're missing each other. I just want to encourage you that there's something really good about the sort of mixing for the purpose of love. And so to hang in there, be an advocate. It is wonderful often for that group who all are alike, but to have someone who walks in and says, you all are onto something good. And that person is a supporter and tries to help. Be that kind of person.